Have you ever wondered how filmmakers of older movies managed to film underwater scenes? You're not alone. There's a myth out there that many of them were not actually filmed underwater and it's all fake. I'm here to debunk that myth by showing you how they did it. Let's dive in, shall we? Early attempts at creating a waterproof film-worthy camera were far from perfect, but many films proved it was possible. But it wasn't an easy job. To start with, there wasn't much filming time, since the scuba tanks of the era had limited air that would last about 50 minutes. It took 20 minutes to lower everyone into place and another 20 to take them back up, leaving only 10 minutes of filming time. Apparently, hemp was laid on the seafloor to control the amount of sand kicked up by the actors and crew. So cameras have been going underwater for quite some time now. They originally were quite simple. However, their evolution has come quite a long way in recent years. The equipment used has been updated and the safety of the actors and crew is of utmost importance. When practical solutions can't be found, CGI comes into play. Still, shooting underwater is no simple task, even nowadays. There are just so many variables at play when filming in open water. Think about the first time you watched 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Wasn't it great? Now think about how far underwater movies have come since then. While modern movies include extremely impressive undersea scenes, it's worth wondering what the tech was before this kind of entertainment. In the early days of underwater filming, the shots were far from perfect, but had spectacular reactions. Viewers thought that scenes were shot in a swimming pool and an effects team had added open water features and effects. It's hard to believe that behind the cameras, scuba-clad crew members shot underwater scenes in fragments as long as their actors could hold their breath. The video is edited to appear as though the swimmers never left the water. When an actor's face is not visible, a professional breath hold diver was used in the scene. Let's take a dive back into the depths of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This was the first film to feature underwater scenes. The underwater footage was shot by the Williamson Submarine Film Corporation in the Bahamas. The underwater scenes in the film were not shot with waterproof cameras, but used a system of watertight tubes and mirrors to reflect underwater images into the lenses of above-ground cameras. Underwater scenes were staged in shallow, sunlit waters. The film was made by the Universal Film Manufacturing Company, now Universal Pictures, not then known as a major motion picture studio. In 1916, they financed the filming of this movie's innovative special effects, location photography, large sets, exotic costumes, sailing ships, and a full-size navigable mock-up of the surfaced submarine Nautilus. The film was made in 2 years at a cost of $500,000. Hal Erickson had said that it could not possibly make a profit, putting the kibosh on any subsequent Verne adaptations for 12 years. Even now, the Nautilus is still one of the most gorgeous sets ever built, and the sequence in which our heroes march across the bottom of the sea in diving bells still looks great and has aged impeccably despite it being over 50 years old at the time of this writing. Come for the production design, stay for the battle with a giant squid. Another of the best underwater movies ever is The Frogman. This 1951 film follows the adventures of, according to the trailer, a group of fin-footed, Google-eyed, beach-blasting heroes. The Navy Underwater Demolition Team's commander has died, and his replacement needs to earn the respect of his crew. But when the team's boat unwittingly runs afoul of the Japanese Navy, its members have to set aside their disdain for their new commander and work together. Despite the film's flaws, including its casting and acting, some of the underwater photography was surprisingly beautiful. All the time, it proved too challenging and expensive for many filmmakers to shoot anything underwater. The revolutionary techniques established in The Frogman would be used in underwater sequences in The Treasure from the Black Lagoon 3 years later. Despite its lack of popularity, the 1989 sea monster movie Leviathan featured some memorable underwater camera work. The underwater walking scenes in the movie were filmed on dry land. Crazy, right? Ultimately, it's enjoyable enough for fans of underwater alien knockoffs. Let's not forget another sea monster movie from the 1980s, Deep Star 6. The team comes into contact with a menacing extraterrestrial life form that has been waiting for eons in the deep dark to attack. Deep Star 6 has its share of cliches, but there's no denying that it features some pretty great practical effects, a tense atmosphere, and fantastic, if brief, examples of underwater camera work. But no matter what, the underwater world is a dangerous place. Proof of this, James Cameron almost died making the film The Abyss. A civilian diving team is enlisted to search for a lost nuclear submarine and encounters danger while exploring yet another alien aquatic species. The Abyss's shoot days averaged 15 to 18 hours. When filming underwater, the crew were typically at about 30 feet deep or 2 atmospheres. An underwater filling station was built so that Cameron and the cast could fuel up on oxygen, thus enabling them to stay down for up to 5 hours at a time. It took a while to get the pH levels right in the tanks. Initially, there was too much chlorine and crew members' hair started falling out and changing colors, and their skin began to burn. During the breaks, the cast and crew emerged from the tanks shivering and shaking. They immediately climbed into plastic hot tubs that were set up topside to warm them up. After spending so many hours in the water, even in wetsuits, they were chilled and clammy. Sounds grueling. What's more, the crew started coming down with ear and sinus infection, so someone erased the words "the abyss" from a blackboard on set and rewrote "the abuse." What went wrong with Cameron? The actors' helmets were so heavy that they required a dive tech assistant to remove them at the surface. The safety divers, known as angels on the set, wore long fins and could swim in from off-camera in a second or two to provide air if something went wrong. Only one diver worked without an angel, director James Cameron. He was weighted with an extra 40 pounds at his waist and ankles so that he could walk around the bottom of the tank with the camera. Cameron needed to be warned when he'd been underwater for an hour and 15 minutes as he got so absorbed in his work that he couldn't keep track of time. A few weeks into the production, camera was talking actor Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio through a shot. She was about 20 feet away. Cinematographer Al Giddings, about 30 feet away, was lining up the shot with his back to Cameron. All the other divers were at the surface or rigging lights off in the distance. As Cameron spoke to Mastrantonio, he took a breath and found that he had no air. Perplexed, he looked down at his pressure gauge, which read 0. The AD had forgotten to give him the requested 1-hour warning. Unable to rouse Giddings, Cameron looked around for the support divers. "Guys, I'm in trouble," he said, using up the rest of the air in his lungs. He made a sign for being out of air, a cutthroat motion across the neck, and a fist to the chest. Nothing. Without a rig at the bottom of a 7 million gallon tank, Cameron was in trouble indeed. He knew he had to ditch his rig or die. Safety divers are trained to stop panicking divers from ascending so they don't blow their lungs. So diver George stopped Cameron about 15 feet from the surface, as he was trained to do, and shoved his backup regulator into Cameron's mouth. But the backup regulator was broken, so Cameron inhaled water and, thinking he had purged incorrectly, then went on to repeat the procedure, getting another blast of water in his lungs. Now he was choking, about to black out, and he had a guy stopping him from ascending. With no way of explaining that he wasn't getting air, Cameron tried to pull away, thinking the director was panicking. George held him even tighter and tried to make him breathe on the regulator. A classic cluster recalls Cameron. It was then that Cameron's rough scuba training in the Buffalo E pool really came in handy. Either that or having brothers, because he punched George as hard as he could right in the face. He let Cameron go, and the director made it to the surface without blacking out. He swam weakly to the dive platform and dragged himself from the tank. Underwater filming is not glamorous. It's really hard, and it takes a lot of people to get it right, but the results speak for themselves. And after hearing about the process, we will definitely feel more grateful watching them. Thanks for watching!